Hi everybody, welcome back. I wanted to put together a quick video over power consumption and how to charge batteries in the backcountry and when you're in and out of small towns. This is just stuff I picked up over the years. I thought I'd just share. There's no right answer to any of this, and it really comes down to how much power you're using. So if you're just using a simple cell phone, you're not going to need a lot of power. If you're filming like me, you're going to need a little bit more. And I just wanted to kind of go over a couple of things and show you what's available now. Since when I first started this, my bike is set up with dyno hub, runs up into the Beacon 2, and then I run power up to a battery that I've got in the front bag, and I'll run that one. 2 years ago, I think about 2 years ago, I ended up doing this Sunny bag. This is the Mini. It's a 5-watt solar panel, and I added that to the front bag, and the reason why, it was just big enough. They make one a little larger, 7.5 watts, but this one worked at the time for what I was doing. And this had a unique feature in it where it had a little thing that kind of tells you the power, and there's a red button, so it goes red, green, and blue. So when blue is like when you're in the sun, it's getting full 5 watts. And even right now, even though it's red, we're facing away from the sun. It'll show you it is it's still charging right now. It's trickle charging that battery. And so one thing I've learned over the years is, I think a lot of people have a misconception on solar panels. They think that they can just plug a phone in, and if the weather's perfect and there's not a lot of clouds and the solar panel is big enough, you can charge a phone. But I found it's much easier to just do battery banks and just to let those charge and trickle charge. They kind of trickle charge like this one right now. If we plug the phone in, it would be on and off, on and off. Phones generally, they have a certain, I believe, voltage they have to be at. And so that's one of the problems when you're riding with a solar panel, you're in and out, in and out. And over the years, for doing all this bike packing, you're not going to get as much power as you think you would, because you're climbing at a slower rate. You're doing a little hike-a-bike. So that's why I ended up offsetting this with a solar panel and running a battery. So I have 2 battery banks running all that. And that's worked for me for what I'm doing. And some of the techniques I found is I started using these 90-degree cables, and I just run a few rubber bands around them. And that way, when you run a cable straight out, it ends up eventually just wearing out the plugs. So yeah, these are just simple 90s. They make them, in the micro, they make them USB-C. So that's just one way of doing this, is changing out the cords will help the battery banks. This one is 10,000 mAh. I have 5,000 mAh up front. And then I started looking into bigger solar panels. And, if you're just doing an overnighter, you could totally get away with just, a battery bank. This is 10,000. That's 20,000, maybe a couple more days. You've seen me use this. This is actually a hand warmer. This is a 4,400 mAh. I'll haul that one in sometime just to warm my hands up. And really, like I said, it comes down to what power you're using. And so for me, I got to charge a phone. I got to charge a headlamp, a light up on the head. I'm using SRAM. I've got electronic wirelessly, so I got to run an extra battery. I've got to charge sometimes this little GoPro light. I've got some GoPro batteries, the GoPro. And that's what I'm saying is I need more power than most. So when I started looking into this, they do make different types of solar panels to help offset this. So I've got this. I've got some bigger rides coming up, and I'm probably going to throw one of these in. I've been using these on and off here and there, but and this is going to help if you got a down day, or if you got like at least an hour, you can set up a solar panel. So this, I paid for everything. Not sponsored by anybody. Using my own money, just trying to figure this out, no discounts. So I've got an older Anchor solar panel for reference. That's 21 watts. They were making these solar panels back in the day out of cloth, and they work fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you've got a saddlebag, you could throw that in. I ended up doing a smaller 10 watt. It's a single fold. And these are super simple. They're easy to clean. So, and this has got little LEDs in there. So red means there's a red one on one side, and the other side is green, blue, and white. So it's kind of got that same concept of that one up there on that little toggle. And this shows you the power coming in. It's just a little more difficult to see. So 10 watts is worked fairly well. They also make a 15 watt. Basically, it's the same size. It's just one more fold. The difference is just a little more real estate, right? And that's really how solar panels come down, is it's always about space. So the benefit for this one, what I've been looking at, is this is 3 amps. This goes up to it's 5 watts times 3 amps max. This one's 5 watts by 2 amps. And I've got what they call now, they're starting making these mini foldable solar panels. And this is a 5 watt by 2 max. And a lot of solar panels, when you look at them, they might be 20, 30 and they watts, but some of them have two plugs. And really they're still basically maxing out right around between 10 and 12 watts. And this is the only one I found that's actually 3 amps. So this is actually, I wanted something a little bigger to charge bigger batteries a little quicker. And that's why I went with this one. And so yeah, this is kind of what's going on. I've got the mini, these are new. That's 10 watts right there. And I've been using that on and off, and it works really, really well. And USB-A, and you can get these little extra plugs, USB-C if you need to, so if you can swap out cables and all that. And these were not available. These are new. Most of the stuff, it's really expensive, they're like $20 or so. But for that one, for an example, you can see how small it is. You could shove it in a bag. I could shove this one up in the top bag. So if I was going to do solar panel and not do dyno hub and all that, this is probably the one I would do for packing in. You could use that for bike packing and backpacking. It's super small. I've got the grams down, so you can see what it is, 209 grams, 10 watts, 338, and the 15 watt is 386. These are probably, like this one I'm going to shove in my bag on my back. But yeah, that one's probably one of the better ones to go with. And like I said, if you're doing batteries and you're worried about the ends, that's a 90 right there, and you plug it in. So yeah, not too bad. One thing I've learned is in and out of towns when you're pulling power, some of these high charge wall outlets, they're too big. So when you plug them in, they don't work. So one thing I've learned is you try to find one that's smaller. And I've got like a little small one by Anchor. Anchor has worked fairly well for me over the years. This will do both. It's really small. And so, like I said, if you're going inside a building, you can use those bigger, you know, they run 3 or 4 cables, I believe, off them. But if you're outside pulling power, that's one of the issues, is you can't get them into the outlet. So I've got a couple of those. I'll swap them out for. So I learned that my first year out pulling power. But other than that, yeah, this is how most of the stuff works. And solar's kind of, it works and it doesn't work. On a perfect day, you'll get 10 watts, you'll get 15, but sometimes you might get 5 watts. And so realistically, I always think of just half solar, and that's kind of how I go on how things are. And if it's a good day and you get more power out of it, it works. To give you an example, so to run the dyno all day, if I'm 10-hour day, I have enough to charge two batteries and the phone, and I can do a headlamp, and that's it. So if I'm doing more filming, that's why I'm trying to offset some of this with solar, or you can bring in some extra batteries or just use a bigger battery bank. So there's no right way to do all this. I'm just showing you guys all the different options, how much power I got to bring in to run everything. And so you can pick and choose. And a lot of this, like, so if I was just doing an overnighter, I'd just do a battery bank. I'd probably do a little small solar panel just in case I get stuck up there 1 or 2 days. You never know. And that's it. And if you're doing 4 or 5 days and you're cutting into town, yep, throw in a power plug and and a big battery bank. And when that down day, you can just charge your batteries and you don't need all this fancy stuff. But you know, if you're doing 4 or 5 days out in the mountains and there is no power, that's probably, and if you really like bike packing, you'd probably want to get into a dyno hub and probably bring in a solar panel. And I'd probably just do something as simple as that little one right there. That should be sufficient to do. And like I said, if you need more power, that's probably one of the better solar panels I found for the size. And like I said, for size wise, they're kind of big, so it's kind of hard to figure out where you're going to put that on the bike. I mean, you could make it work if you get creative with sewing. But yeah, these new mini solar panels, they're still 10 watts. They're just more folding. And this one, I mean, you can put this anywhere. You can put that in your pocket if you wanted to. So hopefully that should help everybody. And that's kind of what I'm using this year. And like I said, I'll get through the year. I got some big trips out through the desert. And that's why I want to do some different solar panels. I won't have the option to charge, so I'll bring a bigger bank. I'll have to mix some stuff up, but hopefully that helps everybody. And yeah, I guess that's it.